Hey everyone, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the European Showrunner Think Tank on the topic Embracing Diversity and Social Responsibility. I'm Nataly, the Chief Executive Director of the IFS, the International Film School Cologne, and the Program Director of the European Showrunner Programme. This is a complete new initiative funded by the Creative Europe Media Programme of the European Union and the Film and Media Fund in NRW, and supported by industry partners as Netflix and Series Mania and media partners as Blickpunkt Film and Variety. It consists of two parts. We have on the one hand the European Showrunner Training, which is a training and mentoring program that provides experienced series writers with the knowledge and the tools to become showrunners. And the second part of the European Showrunner Programme is what you are just attending right now, the European Showrunner Think Tank, a series of industry events aiming at discussing, defining, and eventually establishing the showrunner position in Europe. And the online panel today is the third think tank and aims to showcase opportunities and discuss challenges that come with implementing societal issues in TV series. It will give voice to three impressive executive producers from Europe and the US. Thanks for joining us, dear Nataly, dear Lauren, and hopefully very soon, dear Michelle, and for sharing your experience and thoughts. We feel absolutely honored to have you with us. And before we start, I have the immense pleasure to introduce you to the moderator of this panel. She's the Chief Content and Partnerships Officer of Lumière Benelux and a thought-after expert and moderator. Please welcome Marieke Moeselaars. Over to you, dear Marieke. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, dear Nadia. And yes, good afternoon, everyone, or I guess good morning, good evening, depending from where you're logging in. I'm super happy to join you on this virtual stage today, and especially since we have this amazing proper power panel. And yay, may I say, an all-female panel. Has to be said. Yeah, without further ado, let me introduce these guests we have. First, we have Lauren Schmidt-Hisrich from the US. Hi, Lauren.
Hello, nice to meet you guys.
Nice
so
to
excited to be here and talk.
Me too. So Lauren is the showrunner of Netflix show The Witcher, but we also know her from her work on shows like Private Practice, Daredevil, and The Umbrella Academy. And you're joining us from London, aren't you, Lauren?
I am. So we are shooting season 3 of The Witcher in London right now. So I'll be back in Los Angeles very soon. But for here, I'm dealing with incredibly rainy weather and trying to get through the end of our season.
Season 3. I'm really looking forward to this. Do we know when it's going to come out?
No, I mean, I know, but
but the rest of the world doesn't yet. Very excited. And then from Germany, actually, is joining us Nataly Kudiabor. Hi, Nataly.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you too. Nataly is producer, executive producer, and managing director at UFA Fiction. And she recently delivered, amongst others, the show All You Need, which I just saw has been described as the first German TV show exclusively dealing with gay men as the main characters. Very important.
Can you imagine? And this in 2021.
That this is the first one. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
I thought the same thing. And it is on the main public broadcaster, I think, right? ARD?
Yes, it's with ARD, right?
Okay. And then, yes, I was hoping to also introduce Nichelle Tremble-Spellman right now, who is supposed to join us from the US. We'll just wait for her to pop up and hopefully join the conversation. But let me just say that she is the showrunner of Apple's true crime thriller, Truth Be Told. And before that, she also, for example, worked as a writer and co-executive producer on The Good Wife. And I really, really hope that we get to meet her at a certain point here. You know, ladies, what is really funny, the PR department of IFS introduced all of you as executive producers. So not as showrunners, but all as executive producers. And I thought that's actually a really interesting way to start, because it immediately taps into the confusion that there is when it comes to showrunners versus writer producers versus executive producers. Because Nataly, I don't think you would describe yourself as a showrunner, would you?
No, I wouldn't, because I'm not even a writer. So I really, have a lot of respect for writers. And no, I would say I'm like an executive producer.
Yes, but Lauren, you're also an executive producer.
I am an executive producer, but it's funny because when I introduce myself and my title, I always say showrunner first. So I think that is one of the distinctions. The executive producer is one of my titles, but I feel like because I am a writer, showrunner is the title that I lead with the most.
But showrunner is not necessarily a credit that you have.
No, so yeah, that is not written in the credits. In fact, I get created by credit. So I could introduce myself as the creator, I guess, an executive producer credit, but showrunner is more of, it describes more my responsibilities than my credit. So that is, I think that's the major distinction, which is it mostly describes what I do. I run the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're the helmer of the show in that sense. But I just thought it would be a funny way to just kick off this thing that even at the IFS, does the Showrunner Programme and the Showrunner Think Tanks, there's still that confusion about what's a showrunner, what's an executive producer, what's a writer producer, etc. And that is something that we're really going to get into today as well, because let me explain a little bit what we're going to do today, now that we have an idea of who we're talking to here. First, we'll talk a bit about what we just kicked off already, the show running model in general, US versus Europe, etc. I mean, we have to benefit from the fact that we have, well, at the moment, one fantastic US showrunner and hopefully 2 US showrunners soon. And then after that, we'll dive into what is the actual core of this session, embracing equality, diversity, and inclusion from a showrunner's perspective or from another perspective. And then we'll end with questions from the audience. And for that, you at home, at the office, wherever you are, you can all hand in questions. You can type in questions, but you have to click on the Q&A button that is that you can find somewhere in your Zoom. So click on that, and then you can just type your questions. I will most likely wait until the last 10 minutes, but if there's something that's super relevant for the discussion that we're having at that moment, then let's indeed just tackle it straight away. I'll keep an eye on it. Also, I wanted to tell all of you that I personally, I do not like those panels where we just give people the floor for 15 minutes and that's it. I want a discussion. I want a good conversation. So if you want to say something to one of the other panel members, perfectly fine. Feel free, just raise your hands so I can pass the digital mic, so we're not going to have these awkward moments that we all have on Zoom all the time. Is that okay, ladies?
Let's do it like this.
Perfect. So we're ready. Let's do this. So indeed, about the show running model. Lauren, you have worked both in the US and in Europe. Could you help us a little bit in terms of this model in the US versus what's happening in Europe from your experience?
So I am mostly experienced in the US. That is sort of the format that I grew up under. My first job was the West Wing. I worked there. It was network television. And, you know, the system of writing, I started as a writer's assistant and then moved my way up through the chain. So I always wanted to be a showrunner. That was always in the US model. It wasn't until I did 9 shows in the US. It wasn't until The Witcher that I worked in Europe for the first time. And I will never forget meeting one of the producers the very first week that I landed here. And he, not unkindly, just with curiosity said, "What exactly do you do?" And I was like, you know, okay. And that was my first understanding that the showrunner was really not a position in Europe. You know, what I can really talk about is my job in the US, and then I can talk a little bit about how that transfers into a European model.
Yes, please.
How I would describe my job as a showrunner, which is very different. Like Natalie, I want to hear your perspective as an EP. My job as a showrunner is really the central creative visionary of the show. And so my job starts in the writer's room. And I have an amazing team of writers on The Witcher. There's 9 people. We work for 20 weeks. We break the stories together. Everyone gets to write an episode. And I'm the one that sort of sits and makes sure that everything stays true to the original vision that I pitched Netflix 5 years ago about The Witcher. And it's, I mean, I love a writer's room, which we could go and talk about that in Europe as well. A writer's room is just a group of people who are pushing each other creatively. It's a lot of debate. There's conflict sometimes. It can get pretty heated. It also gets really exciting when you realize that you're all on the same page and you're driving the story forward. I think for a lot of writers, especially in Europe, that's kind of where the process ends for them. They have scripts, they turn them over to directors and producers, and they kind of back out at that point. In the US system, we stay on from the very beginning, obviously, of the writer's room. We go through prep, we go through all of principal photography, and we stay in post. So my job is year round. In general, by the time that we're in post-production on The Witcher, I'm already writing the next season. So it is just a perpetual schedule for me. But why I love that, and I'm biased because I do it, but why I love that is it allows me to make sure that, again, that sort of central vision, the purpose of the story is carried through to the very end. Now, it doesn't mean I do that alone. In fact, one of the things that happens over the years is it goes from being my vision to our vision. And our vision includes the producers, obviously includes the cast, the crew, almost anyone who has their hands on the show, because it has to start funneling out of my brain into other people's brains. They need to start owning it and being able to show up and create within their jobs. But I'm the person that questions can always come back to. I'm the person that can make sure that, oh, it's going a little bit this way, let's bring it back. Or what often happens is my mind is blown when a director or a producer will come to me and say, I've had this thought, I've had this idea, I really want to try this episode this way. And I just think it becomes, it allows The Witcher to take on this sort of group entity, but always stays true to a purpose. And then I would say post-production is my absolute favorite part of the process.
Really?
I didn't know that it was going to be, but it is, it's storytelling. It's the last process of story, or the last step of storytelling. But I kind of love the challenges of it, which is you only have a certain amount of material. You can't, you can't start with a blank page. You are limited in what you can do at that point. And for me, it really pushes my, my creative brain to sort of go out of the box of what I thought it was going to be. And again, start bringing in the amazingly smart ideas of my colleagues and make sure that we're all coming together for something. Yeah, it's that's the most exciting part to me.
And I totally understand the creative authority and the vision throughout the whole process. I think where we in Europe start seeing the challenges is, let's say, management responsibility, budget responsibility, like all of those different elements of the process. What about, I mean, could you tell me something about that?
Yes, of course. And it's something that we talk a lot about in the US as well. We actually have several showrunner training programs in the US, because when you start out as a writer, no one tells you that, you know, when you hope that you create a show and it gets made, that you're going to become a manager of people. And I think that that's not always a quality that you think that you're going to need as a writer, a leadership quality. Or for me, I can become very shy at times, and I've really had to learn how to find my voice. But I also think that it's the parts of production, prep production, and even post-production, that through learning those steps, I've also become a better writer. It's very cyclical, because you start to learn what works, what doesn't work. Certainly, there are people who have much more knowledge of the budget than I do, but I know that I have to write within that budget, or else I'm writing big stories that we're never going to be able to do. And that's not fair to the writers. It's certainly not fair to the people who start seeing these exciting scripts come in that we're going to have to cut down to size. So again, there are, you know, The Witcher has a standing crew of about 600 people.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
You know, occasionally going up to about 900 people when we have multiple crews going. So it's a huge machine, and there are many producers that are in charge of large, you know, sections of pushing that along. But it's basically my job to sort of have oversight of it all. And certainly when things start to go wrong, for instance, if there are issues on set, if there's communication issues, a lot of those come back to me. And because I'm the person whose face is most visible on set every day. And so it really has been these past, I mean, I've been doing The Witcher now for 5 years. So it's been a huge learning experience for me as well.
I can imagine. Nataly, what about your European perspective here?
Oh my God, I'm so impressed. I have to say,
Yeah,
it's
same.
amazing, Lauren, really, all the shows you've done. And it's really amazing to listen to your journey, because I think, as you said before, in Germany, it was always, or in Europe, I think overall, it was always the problem that the creative process of the writer ended as soon as he handed over the scripts. And so I think we had a few years ago, there was really a big outcry of the writers saying, so enough is enough. We have to do something about it. And we want to sit at the table. We want to make the decisions, because after all, most of the time we are the creators of the show, of the world. And then we're just like being cut out, and maybe also like directors or producers came on board and just changed the idea around and, you know, did what they wanted to do with it. And I think this is really, they had a point saying that, and there are a lot of, you know, strong voices we already had in our market, but they weren't heard. And now we have like this big change. And of course, we're inspired by the US system, although I think it's not, you know, we don't have this hierarchy like you have, which is like really, you know, there's really a way how you do it and how you work as a showrunner. And also like in a writer's room, we don't have this. I think most of the time we just do it like how it fits maybe the writer, the creator, what does he need? So what can we do to make his work better? But I think we've just like for a few years ago, we started to work in this kind of system. So it's pretty new for us. And I think it's also really interesting to have the to compare it to your system and see maybe we can just like find or invent a European model for that. You know, that would be great, I think.
And what does this system look like right now? Like, what other responsibilities have the writers at UFA at the moment?
No, it depends on the show, to be honest. The most of the shows I'm doing, for example, All You Need is a gay series. It's the first gay series we had in Germany. So there is this writer director who came to me and asked if I wanted to be the producer of the show. And I said, of course, you know, I'm very honored. If I can help, of course, I'm here. And then, you know, of course, he was just like the driving force, and it was a lot about his experience, like being a gay man living in Berlin. And so we made sure that he had like, you know, great people to work with him. We made sure, for example, that the whole team, when we were shooting, we had a lot of people out of the community, which was very important for him and for us. So it was really, you know, we made sure that in every aspect, he was just like, he got the support he needed. And I think what I can bring to the table is always, of course, I have to be interested in the story. Otherwise, I think I can't really be a good help, to be honest. But you know, maybe I can make, you know, in the development process, I can help to be good sparring, to make maybe ideas better, and just to help. And since I'm not a writer, of course, I'm not going to just like interfere in this way. So it's a lot of conversations, and also like in the writer's room. And of course, you know, when you talk to the network, I'm always there. I see always, you know, I understand my position as like protecting also the idea, sometimes protecting the creatives and take care of stuff I think they shouldn't, you know, be bothered with, so they can do their work. So I think one of the nicest compliments I ever got was just like another showrunner or the creator of a show I did, The Mopes. We did this for HBO. And she said, you know, there was so much trouble, but I didn't even knew about it because, you know, I could do my job, just like writing, being on set, doing whatever, but you took care of that. And, you know, this is a great compliment. So I think maybe that's also just like, you know, a tandem, you know, you work together, you team up. And so maybe it's our way to work.
I think Nataly, you've just hit something on the head, just really important, is that I do think that a showrunner is nothing without a really strong producer as their partner, because it is too big of a job for any one person. And what you just said, I was like nodding along furiously, because you are paying attention to the creative process and making sure that the creator has whatever they need at any given point. And sometimes that may be you as a sparring partner of hearing ideas and being a mirror to them, or allowing them to sort of bounce back. Sometimes it's just making sure that they have a quiet place to write, or keeping problems from them. Yes. It's something that I have really begun to understand, just how much doesn't make it to me, because it is solved. Those fires are put out before they make it to me, so that I can concentrate more on the creative process. And I do think, I mean, my my relationships with my producers on this show are the strongest I have, and I would be nowhere without them. So I do think that that's really something to keep in mind when we're talking about a showrunner. A showrunner needs producing partners. They really need that help and that backup to do the job.
So when it comes to what does a writer need to bring to the table when aiming to become a showrunner, I guess one is a strong producer.
Yes, and some, you know, sometimes you meet like the producers that I've worked with on this particular show are all British. So I was sort of brought into the process and I interviewed a bunch of producers. And my big thing when I'm looking for a producer is that I don't want no to be the first answer. I think producers have a very bad rap in terms of budget, in terms of, you know, the restrictions, because they are responsible for the logistics of so many things. And so I've definitely worked with producers that it's kind of like, nope, I don't like that idea, or nope, I don't want to do that. And what I love about the team that I have here is it always starts with a leave it with me. Let me try to figure out a response or an answer to that. Sometimes it does come back to me. And when I get that no, I know that all paths have basically been, you know, pursued, and it's still not possible. And so I believe that now. But one of the things that I think is really great, and Nataly, you can probably speak a lot to this, is sort of how you find that chemistry, because it's beyond just how you can help each other. This has to be the person, you have to have an immense amount of trust. You have to be able to both agree and disagree while staying respectful and kind. It's a hard task. I would love to know how you sort of approach finding the right chemistry and how you know when it's right.
I really have to say, you know, now that I've been doing this also for a couple of years, I think it becomes more and more important, as you said, to find somebody you have a chemistry with, because otherwise it's work anyway. It's going to be work. It's going to be hard work. But I think if you know from the beginning, you have like different visions, or it's just like the way you work, it's not, you know, it doesn't work together, you should really not do it. You know, sometimes also, you know, I had to say, I love the show, I love the idea, but maybe I'm not the right person for it, because I can't really work with this person. It's not because it's a bad person, we're just different, you know. And I think once you've experienced this chemistry and it really, you know, hits, and then you're like, my God, everything's possible, anything's possible. It's such a great feeling, and it just like, you know, enables you to do everything, you know, can move the world. You want to work like that, you know, you don't want to miss this. And I think doing this one show, this is so funny because, you know, the creator, the showrunner is doing another show now, not with me. And we're like constantly on the phone saying, oh, I miss you. Yes, I miss you too. When can we work again? You know, now you're away. It's so nice because it's like, you know, you just want to have the experience again. And I think it also makes your work better. I really have to say this, because you can enable each other and it really makes your work better and the product is better. So completely, you should always look for that.
I think it's also something that is, I mean, regardless of the showrunner, the producer, director, writer, trifecta, regardless of that, I think in our industry, trust, shared vision, we're working on these projects that are in the end passion projects, that are in the end emotional products, right? And we're working on projects together with people for 3, 4, 5 years. So of course you need to be able to establish that connection, that trust, make sure that you can like be there for each other until the end, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so let me move over to the second part of our conversation today. Actually, the title of the panel is Embracing Diversity and Social Responsibility. So embracing equality, diversity, inclusion from a showrunner's perspective, but maybe also just from a wider perspective. Nataly, I would love to start with you here, because you've changed quite a lot at UFA recently when it comes to these topics, haven't you?
Yeah, but I have to be honest, I joined UFA 3 years ago, and we already had a diversity circle there. And it was about gender and LGBTQI+. And when I joined, we also now have BPOC, and we have also, you know, a diversity circle for disabled people. So
so you're not taking all the credit for it?
No,
okay.
I'm not. No, there were people thinking about it beforehand, which is really, I have to give them credit. So it was easy for me to join, and people were ready to listen. And I think this is really interesting. And so now we try to have a conversation if we have shows and we're not sure about, you know, certain aspects. So you have like a head of, you know, this group of the diversity circle you can contact, or could ask them for advice, or could you please have a look at the script, or do you know somebody I could contact, you know, to have like a genuine opinion for that. And, you know, so this is really interesting. This is a big help. And I think, you know, people now know that they have to go the extra mile. You know, it's not like, at least in Germany, I have to say, before we had the streamers in our market, you know, it was pretty easy. You just, you know, said you were, you know, everybody could write about everyone without knowing anything about the communities, you know, to be honest. So now this changed a lot. We have to be much more accurate. And also, like, you know, the streamers are asking us, you know, to do this. And so I think now the market also changed, you know, so.
But help me a little bit. This diversity circle, what is this? This is a circle of people that tap into communities.
You know, most of the time they're out of the community, so it's not like they helmet and they say, oh, I'm an expert here, and no, but they're out of the community. But still, we have experts we can rely on. You know, it's also just like me being Black. I'm not an expert about, you know, the Black experience. I'm not. So if there's something you should really know, we know how we can contact, who we can contact, and just like get more information. So and also the diversity.
Walk us through. Sorry.
Yeah. No, please.
Now I was just wondering. Walk us through how that worked with All You Need. Like, okay, you're going to use the diversity circle. How does this work?
No, to be honest, because I wouldn't have ever done this show without Benjamin Gutsche, who's from the community. Yeah. You know, you can't tell a story like that. We wouldn't ever do that. But still, you know, it's about his experience. So we were talking about, you know, we were talking to the diversity circle, giving them the scripts to read. And for example, that was really interesting. We had a press, and what do you call it, an agent for the press, is this right? Yeah. And no, they had some questions, and I was reading the question. I was like, why are we asking the actors, for example, if they're straight or not? I said, can we do this? This doesn't feel right to me. So we talked to the circle and just like showed them the questions, you know, the journalists would have been given, and they said, no way, you know, we're not going to do this. And this is really good because, you know, sometimes it's just your own gut feeling, but then you have, you know, more opinions, people out of the community you can rely on. And then we just changed everything, said, no, this is not going to happen. And that was really great because you're stronger. You're not the only voice. I think an experience that a lot of minorities have is just like, you're always the only voice who says, oh, I don't like this. And sometimes you don't want to speak up because you're always the only voice. But now we have like a circle you can rely on, somebody, you know, you can go to, and there's a whole group of people. So this is really good experience now.
Since I don't think Michelle is joining us, I mean, I haven't heard anything.
What a pity.
Such a pity. Yes, I guess I'm going to structure this a little bit different. There is a question already that I think is for you, Nataly, but maybe you can both answer. And I'm just going to throw it in. It says, in Germany, embracing diversity in TV shows seems to get translated more and more into creating shows for peer groups and or communities. Being a diverse writer, and a diverse viewer too, of course, I wonder, is that really the way to go? It feels like marginalizing diverse groups all over again.
So is it about, I hope I did I get it right? It's about ticking boxes? Is this what?
Yes, I think that is what Nicole Moschle, thank you for the question, by the way, means.
I think that's right, to be honest, you know. I have the feeling that a lot of people, they know they have to do something about diversity now, but they don't know how. So the easiest way is just like, oh, I get the the Black, the Asian, the whatever, you know, just tick it off and that's it. But you don't change the core of a show. And I think, you know, the most important thing at the moment is just like voices to be heard. And so we have to have writers like the person who just posed this great question, who is creating her own show. So, you know, then you don't even have to tick boxes because, you know, I think the writer can't do without thinking diverse because it's the writer's point of view. Yeah. And also what I always say is just like what I think really lacks, for example, in German networks, and I'm also talking about streamers here, to be honest, that the commissioning editors, they're not diverse at all.
The gatekeepers in general. Yeah.
There came, you know, it's just like Peter hires Peter, you know, it's what I always say. And so you don't get the diverse aspect because there's nobody who brings in a new point of view and a fresh breeze. You know, I think you might experience this, Lauren, as well in the States. So I think the more diverse your team is, the better you get because you don't, you know, you don't miss anything. And it's easier. You don't have to have the checklist and say, oh, did I think of this? Did I think of that? It's just like it comes on naturally.
Yes, I think that's a fantastic, I mean, Lauren, when it comes to The Witcher and the way that you, or at least for me, construct the female characters as like super layered and complicated, equally complicated as men. Let's put it like that. How did you start with that?
I mean, I don't know that there was a decision to start with it as much as why wouldn't we
exactly
a bunch of characters that are equally layered, and why wouldn't we create a world that drew on many people's experiences? I think one of the things that I'm proudest of in The Witcher is the diversity and inclusion that we have in front of the camera. And by the way, now we're working even harder to bring it about behind the camera, which is, you know, they're sort of two separate things.
That is actually something that I wanted to ask Michelle, because she comments a lot on that, on onset and offset is not necessarily the same yet when it comes to equality, diversity, and inclusion. The story might be diverse, but on-set life might look a little different.
And I think that's really important. And that's, I mean, maybe this goes to the ticking box part of the question, which is it's one thing to say, look at, you know, all of the diversity that we have on set. We have Black people, we have Asian people, we have Polish people, we have white people, we have, you know, but it does feel tokenistic if we're not actually providing an equally diverse environment for those stories to thrive. So, you know, for instance, in the writer's room, diversity is something that I keep in mind. There are so many talented writers. One of the things that I get asked the most is, why wouldn't you just hire the most talented people? And I think, well, why do you assume that the most talented people are white? Like what does that mean? Like this sort of innate racism, even in that question. There are so many talented writers. So why wouldn't I hire writers whose experience is different than mine? And I think what that gets us, and Nataly, I'm really curious about your thoughts on this too. I have so many different trails of thoughts here. But I also think that not only provides us sort of that diverse foundation to make sure that we're telling stories that are reflective of a lot of people's experiences, but one of the things that has happened this season is that we have several LGBTQ plus characters. And one of the pieces of feedback that I've heard from those particular actors is it's amazing, and they feel really great that the story isn't all about them being gay, being queer, you know, being non-binary. It's like, it's not a gay story. They are a character who is queer within a story. Sometimes that's important to that story, sometimes it's not. And I also think that's the next step in diversity as well. Absolutely. You know, we're not just telling stories that are about a particular, you know, for a particular audience, about a particular group of people. The next step is fully integrating how we're telling stories. And
proper representation of society.
Exactly. It's like, not everything I do is based on me being a woman. Some of it is, absolutely, but not all of it is. So I do think that that's really important to the storytelling as well.
No, but I think you're so right. I think it's about creating opportunities for people. And that I think we have to say it's stupid to say you're just looking for the best writer, because if the best writer never had a chance to just like see there's a place for him or her in the industry, so they never did it. And we have the problem now in Germany, because now everybody's just asking for diverse stories, diverse storytellers. And of course, they don't have a track record because they haven't been in the industry for 10 years. No, they couldn't, because there were these opportunities, there weren't. And now, I think we really have to make sure that these people come into the business, make sure also to protect them, maybe, to find somebody who's like partner up with them, who's more experienced, and, they bring in their experience, and then they can develop together. Or just like, the next show, now they're just like, number 2, and on the next show, they're number 1, and, things like that. And I really get angry when I hear that, because it's also like, when you hire a woman and then they say, I think we want to hire the best person. This might be a man. So it's crazy, yes. Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really interesting what you say about also protecting them, because when it comes to equality, diversity, inclusion, I think creating that safe space for everyone to really, really thrive within the creative process, but also within the chain of command, etc., is super important. How do you, as showrunners or executive producers, how do you do that?
I think that for me, it's not something that we have fully done yet. It's something that we're all exploring. When we start talking about sort of bringing new experiences into filmmaking, I think one of the things that I always think about is my experience, which is that I was lucky enough to have parents that supported me and supported my dreams. And so when I started as a writer's assistant and I was making not enough money to afford rent, to afford a car and gas, that I had parents that could help me. And if you think about how that narrows who could take my job as a writer's assistant, like that's something that we have to start thinking about. Mm-hmm. How do we not just offer jobs, but make sure that the people who are doing the jobs are supported? How do they get to, the studio? We're basically in the middle of the country here, the countryside. It's how do we make sure that that these people are taken care of, that their salaries are high enough to pay rent. And then, Nataly, as you're saying, once we do have, once we are sort of providing opportunities for a diverse group of people, how do we make sure that they're not lonely? I use the word a lot because something that I have been educated about a lot this season. And I had not actually thought about it before. And someone said to me, sometimes, Lauren, you are on a scout, for instance, and you are the only woman. And how does that feel? And my first reaction is, well, I don't think anyone treats me any differently because I'm a woman. I don't think that I'm dealing with anyone sort of sexist, innately sexist within that group. However, it does get lonely being the only person that is this specific category. And so if we extend that outwards, I think that's something else. It's not enough to hire a Black person and say, great, we ticked a box. Yeah. Like that is not providing a healthy and safe space for people, because then they do feel like a token. They feel like they are just one, and that they're not, they don't have the right community of support. So that's another thing that we're really thinking about is we need people to feel safe when they come to the office. And you don't innately feel safe if you are the only person representing a particular category or a particular group of people. So that's something that we're actively pushing against as well.
But it's not just during that process. I guess it's also afterwards when the show has been released, when it's the talk of the town, etc. I think you, Lauren, I do see you comment a lot. You're on the forums a lot. You deal with a fan base, like a very vast fan base that is also very outspoken. Maybe you can tell me a bit about that, how you deal with that.
Yes, I knew that that we would be causing some waves when we cast as diversely as we cast. Yeah. Obviously, The Witcher is based on Polish novels by Andrzej Sapkowski. They were written at a certain time where I think the assumption was that most characters were white. It's never actually stated in the books. Occasionally there's a descriptor of a person who has pale skin. But I wanted to push against that. And I don't think it dishonors the stories. In fact, I think it enriches the stories that we're telling and makes them available to a bigger audience. And I think there's a lot of the fan base that agrees with me. I think there's a very vocal part of the fan base that disagrees and feels disrespected by it. It's not going to change what I'm doing. I actually think this is an incredibly important piece of what The Witcher is, and sort of putting out there that fantasy is not just for white people. I mean, one of my big things is
they even have to say this.
I love it.
It is crazy how often I had to say it, and it's something that I see actively changing, which is the great news. You know, I think in season 1, a big deal was made of the fact that I was a woman and I was given this big franchise to run. I have a little issue with the word given, but okay. You know, but I think that is not the story that it was when I first started. I think that, Nataly, as you're saying, you have to give people the opportunity to prove themselves, to move up the ladder, to grow. And that's another thing. We have to give people the chance to make mistakes and grow.
You're right, absolutely.
We have to be able to fail and keep growing from that. So I do think that it is, I have an optimistic view of it, which is I think that the stories about our diverse cast, or the stories about me being a female showrunner of this seemingly male franchise.
That's a breakthrough in a way.
Yep. I just think that those stories are dwindling quite a bit, and that I think points to a more hopeful future.
Do you, and this is for both of you actually, do we think that a showrunning model can actually be beneficial when it comes to driving this change? Like, is it important that you have this showrunner that oversees everything throughout the whole process in order to drive the whole change that we're talking about?
I mean, I think my gut is it's not necessarily a showrunner that you need. It's a leader that you need. Yeah. It is the person who is saying, I'm not going to compromise on this. And these are conversations that we are actively having on our show. Because as I mentioned earlier, I'm really happy with what's happening in front of our cameras. We need to do a better job at diversifying our crew and making sure that we have an equally diverse, you know, group of experiences behind the camera. And I am not willing to compromise on that. And sometimes that means hiring people who have slightly less experience and letting them grow and evolve, letting them make mistakes, as we just said. You know, sometimes this means hiring people that we don't know. I think something that happens in television, and Nataly, I'm not sure if it's the same in Germany, but there becomes this very tight group of people. Well, I've worked with them before, so I know them, and so I'm only going to hire them. We need to broaden our base. We need to hire people we don't know. We need to allow new people into what can be a very exclusive club, it feels like. And that comes with outreach. And I love the idea of the diversity circle. It comes with outreach to the community and outreach to schools, outreach, you know, starting very young, going to secondary schools here in England to say that this is a career that you could actually have. Yeah, so I don't know that it takes a showrunner. It just takes someone who is willing to push forward and not take no for an answer.
So strong vision again, and trust in that sense, trust in that strong vision. Nataly, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree. I think you have to have somebody who's just like a leader and just like who's not afraid, because I think fear is the worst thing you can have in our industry. And I have to say, I had to grow older to lose my fear, to be honest, because you know you made wrong decisions, you failed, and we're still here. And I think this is one of the most important things when I work now with people who are younger than I am, or with my team, when I say, let's see what's going to happen, because, you know, I'm not going to say I'm fearless, but I have less fear. And also, I think what you said, Lauren, just like that, we always hire the people we know. This is also a question of just like fear, because, you know, oh, this worked before, and maybe the networks love this director or the DOP, and so I'm going with him or her. And so just like, you know, to have the uncertainty that the new person you're hiring is performing in the same way, because it might be more work for yourself. And, you know, you don't want to disappoint whoever. And so I think, you know, to have less fear, to be strong and believe in yourself. So this, you know, every show needs a person like that. If it's the showrunner or if it's the showrunner and the EP, if they work together on eye level, I think, you know, be safe.
But they should then work together in terms of casting, in terms of crew, in terms of post-production. Like it all comes down to like this proper collaboration of the creator, head writer, writer, producer, whatever, together with the EP and the director in lots of cases as well. Yeah. We have a question. We actually have more questions, but we can do this one first. From Gina Mendoza. What do you think that lies behind the resistance to telling more diverse stories, I have to say, and stories that address social issues? And what would be good strategies to avoid the separation between creating entertainment stories and stories that address social issues?
That is a great,
very good question.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, I think to answer the first part, just in my opinion, I think, Natalie, you just spoke to it. It's fear. It is fear of being lambasted somehow. It is fear of spending all of this time and money making a show and no one's going to watch it because it is either, you know, pressing a social issue button, a hot button that no one is willing to take on. You know, Natalie, just even what you're talking about, having sort of the first gay-led show in Germany, that's bold. And I'm sure that there will be people who have a lot of feelings about that. And, you know, I think that I've gotten many a nasty fan letter about what I've done too. And I think that it just, and that's part of the resistance, is again, sort of the sense of this is what's worked before, this is what's been successful before, and that's our model, versus we're going to take a chance. And, you know, I worked on a show before The Witcher on Stars called Power. And it was very interesting because it was a Black-led show, both, you know, in front of the camera and behind the camera. And it found an audience unlike any show that I've ever been on. And it was such a chance for the network to take at the time. And it was like, what, an all-Black cast, what do you mean? Guess what? It's incredibly popular. It has multiple spin-offs because this is an audience that was thirsting for stories. Also, it's good entertainment. So I am white. I still like it. You know, it's not entertainment that is only targeting one group of people. I think it takes bold vision like that. I really do.
I think this is also a gatekeeping thing again.
When
it comes to, oh no, there's this entertainment and there's indeed ticking all these boxes, diversity, etc. No, it's all in one. And I think, yeah, it's indeed has to do with the gatekeepers that we deal with. Oh wow, the questions are popping in.
Good.
Okay, well, here we go. I'll try to do them all. So 2 rather general questions. What was the hardest lesson you had to learn while working in film and TV, and what advice do you have? From Nicola Kuster.
I think there's one for Lauren, right?
I think so too.
Wow. You know, the hardest lesson that I had to learn is that that 1, I can't do it all myself, and that 2, my success wasn't dependent upon that. I think being given the opportunity to run The Witcher, I was so afraid of failing because I was so afraid that I constantly had to prove myself again and again and again. And I remember wondering, when am I going to feel like I can just do my job and, as I said, make mistakes or have great moments, but not constantly be worrying like, is Netflix not going to think that I'm worthy of this role? And I think it took me the first season of sort of working myself into the ground because I was constantly trying to do everything to prove that I could do everything and that I was worth their money, worth their time, worth the chance that they took on me. That is not how a great show is made. That is how a showrunner falls into the ground and is sick and can't get back up. It really does take a team, and it was hard for me to start letting go of pieces of the show and have trust in the people that worked with me. But it is the best decision I've ever made for me, for my family, my health, and also for the show. It's much, much better for the show.
The interesting thing is, I had a conversation with Nataly before this this actual panel, and we talked about how the lack of female showrunners in Europe, for example, and we then came to maybe not a conclusion, but we had a discussion about maybe it's because of this that lots of women actually don't dare to call themselves showrunners, or because they need to live up to this particular title.
Mhm.
And it kind of taps in with what you just described, that what you had in the beginning.
I have just sort of like a tiny little story about that. When I, after The Witcher was successful and after we realized that there were going to be multiple seasons and spin-offs, Netflix offered me an overall deal so that I would stay and continue to run the show.
Yeah.
And I remember there was going to be some sort of press announcement on Deadline. And I was so embarrassed. I didn't want it to be announced. I just felt like it was really showy, that it was, you know, that like I didn't need to put myself out there. And Sophie Holland, who's the casting director on The Witcher, who is an amazing human and friend, she said to me, other women need to see that this can happen.
Role models.
And
you need the role models.
As soon as she said it, I was like, oh, this isn't about me at all. This is about other women looking and saying like, oh, this is an achievable goal, you know, and I can strive for this. And as soon as I realized that, I'm not embarrassed anymore to introduce myself as, you know, the showrunner and creator of The Witcher, because it is what I do. I don't need to be shy about it. And I think
and you deserve it.
Yes.
Thank you. But it is,
and we all do, and we need to own it more.
That's exactly it. I think that it really is about owning it and feeling that we belong in that space and that we can take up that space, you know, that we don't need to apologize for taking up that space or having that voice.
Absolutely. I have a question from Lemba. How can more diversity in the upper echelons of production / amongst the gatekeepers be achieved? Nataly, as a producer, what do you think?
You know, for me, just like when I'm working, of course, I can do it myself. And, you know, it's an issue for me anyway. And I have to look out and try to reach out to people and see, oh, you know, you go to the universities and see who's there and, you know, try to help people develop a career. I think really practically speaking, is, as I said before, I think we should have more money for production, to have like spots filled with 2 people. So you have somebody's in the lead, and then you have somebody who's just like, you know, maybe still learning on the job, and then really get these people into work. And I had some conversations with people from Netflix and Amazon, and I think they're starting programs. And, you know, it's about money. You have to find the money for this and for the programs, and that the people, as you said, Lauren, before, are being paid while they learn, because otherwise some of them, they can't afford to learn. And but I think it's in the minds of people, but we really have to make a stretch here still, you know, it's not coming in easily, I have to say.
The word that we always use is investment.
Yes.
Because it's not a problem that can be solved overnight. And so expecting, one of the things that I'm often told, you know, and have been for years now, even back in the US, you know, it's just like, hire more women. Okay, I want to hire more women, but to hire more women, we have to have more women who are trained to do the jobs that we need them to do.
Yes.
So we need to start at the very, you know, foundations of the issue. We do need to have training and apprenticeship programs. We need these companies to invest the money in those programs, knowing that they're not going to see the results for several years. That's worth it. Investment always.
There's an interesting question here, which maybe taps into what we just discussed before. Franziska Polman, and she says, thank you all for this amazing panel. You're welcome. As you talked about the title showrunner, at what point would you say you are a showrunner? Being an up-and-coming showrunner, would you recommend to produce the pilot or wait until you get a pilot greenlit?
That's a great question.
Yes.
So what I would say, and maybe this is sort of the split between producer and showrunner, you know, in the US, as you spoke about, Marika, that there is a very structured way to go from being, you are a staff writer, a story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, co-executive producer, and then executive producer. So that's sort of that path. I started calling myself a showrunner when The Witcher was greenlit, or I should have. I was still pretty embarrassed at that point. I would introduce myself as a writer. But once I realized that there would be a show, that there would be this sort of massive enterprise to run, that's when I started using that title.
Okay.
Bravo.
Yeah, definitely. We're running out of time. My God, and we're only 3 right now. We would have been 4, but I feel like we could talk for like at least an hour more about this important topic. I'm going to just ask you a question that has nothing to do with diversity or show running, but just because it's fun and we want to be inspired. What show are you watching right now? What can you recommend to us? Lauren. But you're shooting right now.
Yeah. Though one of my least favorite things is television writers who say, I don't have time for TV. It's like, we're all very busy, but you have to find the time to sort of see what is stimulating people right now. I will admit that this show has been out for a while, and I was late to it, but the show Severance on on Apple. I mean, it's amazing, and it's been a while since I have felt so moved by a show and gasped at the end of it, like gasped and then realized it was over. But it's really inspiring me to think about my own writing and think about what original stories I would want to create next. I feel I've done a lot of adaptations now. I love doing adaptations, but it really, like, I want to get inside that brain and realize, like, who started that story? What was the first kernel? So I'm really reflecting on that right now in my own life. And you, Nataly?
I have to say, one of the, also an Apple show, I have to be honest. I love Ted Lasso, I have to say.
Yes.
Because it's a show which is not about football at all.
Nope.
But really, I saw the first season and then I was like, oh my God, I think I have to do something else because I'm never going to produce something great like that. I was really impressed because it's so warm-hearted and it's so touching, and also, you know, the stereotypes are broken, and I really loved that, you know, and also the friendship between the women was great, and, you know, like, because you would have expected that they don't like each other and there's like a competition between them and all the rest of it. It was a small show, but it was so, it welcomed you, it embraced you, and it especially during, you know, lockdown, pandemic, and all the rest of it, it was so really uplifting, and I really enjoyed that.
It's like a warm blanket, that Lasso.
Yes, it is like a warm blanket. That's right.
You just want to wrap yourself in it.
Absolutely.
Ladies, thank you so much for this. This was the 3rd of 5 editions of the European Showrunner Think Tank. And if any of you out there is interested in the preceding sessions, then they focused on the European approach to showrunners and the broadcaster's perspective. So when we want to hear from the gatekeepers, watch that session. You can find the video recordings at Showrunners. I made that mistake before, showrunners.eu. And the recording of today's session will be there available shortly as well. The upcoming 4th edition will focus on the producer's perspective, and that will be actually in Cologne on stage with me again, yay, during the European Series Day that is part of the Film Festival Cologne. So save October 20th in your schedules. Yeah, well, that is it for today. Let's all give like a virtual hand to these amazing guests, Lauren and Nataly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
For this important discussion. Nichelle, wherever you are, we missed you, and we really hope you can join us for another session during the Showrunners Think Tanks and Program. Everyone, thank you. I hope you have inspired many during the sessions. Thank you so much.